Hello, beautiful and amazing people. How is everyone? I'm super excited to see you guys. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. This is the Wealthy Trustee webinar. Tonight, I am going to be educating you guys on trust. Okay, so we're going to learn everything, not everything, excuse me, that's a lie. We're not going to learn everything. I'm going to give you what I can in the next 90 minutes, okay? So it's going to be short, it's going to be sweet and straight to the point because what I want to do is I want to show you the steps that you need to take in order to set up a trust, okay? A lot of us, we are so busy making money and saying that we're building generational wealth, but we don't have the tools to build the generational wealth. So how is it that you are building generational wealth without the most important thing, which is a trust? That is your estate. That is how you're going to leave your legacy. So if you don't have a trust, you're not building generational wealth. So you can't be out here in these streets saying that you're doing that. So you have come to the right place at the right time. This is a divine moment for us to get into it and for you guys to receive this information, okay? So I do have a short presentation for you guys. With the presentation, after we're done with the presentation, I will show you guys what a trust looks like, okay? So that you can put a visual, because I'm a visual person, okay? That's the type of learner that I am. And so I'm going to be showing you guys that way so that you can put an actual picture to what I'm actually talking about, okay? Which is a trust entity, okay? So my name is Christine Yvette. I'm going to be your host for this webinar. I'm excited that you are in this place and space right now. We're going to dive right in. You guys can come on camera. I would love and appreciate that. And after we're done with the webinar, what I'll do is I'll open up the floor for Q&A and I'll answer any questions that you guys might have, okay? So without further ado, we're going to get started, you guys. All right, so let me go ahead and share my screen here. And we'll dive right into what a trust entity is. So you should be able to see my screen. Let me see here. Oh, yeah. Okay, good. Technology is on point today. All right. So, like I said, I'm Christine Yvette. Let me just tell you, I am the founder of the brand 7 Ways to Wealth, where we teach people how to structure trust entities. Okay. So, what I want to do is I want to educate you on what a trust is. Okay. So, as you see on the screen right now, what is a trust entity, right? So, a trust is an entity, right? That's the first thing that you need to know. Now, you are an entity, I am an entity, okay? So that is very, very important. Hold on 1 second. One second. All right. So you are an entity. You're a living, breathing entity. Okay. So just like how you are a living, breathing entity, the trust is also a living, breathing entity. So that's the first thing that you need to know, because the trust doesn't have any limitations to what it can do out here in society. So, for example, a trust can do anything and everything that you can do. So if you can go out and buy a house tomorrow and a car the next day, the trust can also do that. Okay. So the trust can acquire assets. The trust can run a business. The trust can write a book. Okay. So whatever it is that you want the trust to do, the trust can do it. Okay. So just like how you are out here in society operating with your name and your social security, the trust is also operating out here in society with its name and its EIN number, which is that 9-digit number that's attached to the trust. Okay. So you have to just think about it kind of like like a baby. Okay. So now that we know that a trust is an entity, right? There are different sections to the trust. So the trust, how does this entity come into existence, right? That's the question that we need to be asking ourselves. Now, the way that it comes into The way that it comes into existence is through a contract, you guys, okay? So a trust is a contract. So it is what we call a contractual entity. That is how it is able to be legalized and operated, okay? So now with this contract, right? With the contract, there's several different parts and sections to the contract. There's two very most important parts that I want you to know of, okay? Those two very most important parts are, first is the indenture. Indenture means agreement. So that is pretty much the bylaws. That is the sections inside of the trust, right? Where we are actually putting all the rules and regulations, okay? The second part is the declaration. That is where you're declaring what you're setting up in this contract. Remember, how many contracts are out here, right? You can have promissory notes, you can have any other types of contracts, right? There's so many different types. So with that, we're declaring what it is and we're declaring what it is not. Okay, so we're declaring that it is not an LLC. It is not a corporation. It is not an LLP. It is not any of those other types of contracts like partnerships and joint ventures. It's not that. What it is a trust. So that's what we're setting up when we're creating this contract, okay? So like I told you, I'm going to show you at the end of the call what an actual trust contract looks like, okay? So let's keep going on. So now that you know what a trust entity is and that you know that it is a contract, there is different parties involved in this contract, okay? So the different parties that are involved is the grantor. The grantor is the creator of the trust, okay? So that is what sometimes we call them the settlor or the trustor, okay? So that is the person who has created the trust for the benefit of somebody else. That person is the beneficiary, okay? So the grantor created the trust for the beneficiary, okay? Now, the second party is the trustee. That's the controller of the trust, meaning that that's the person who's operating the trust on a day-to-day basis, and they have full control over the assets that are inside of the trust, okay? The next party involved is the beneficiary. That is the inheritor of the trust. So that is the person who's going to be receiving the assets or the inheritance at the end of the trust when the trust is terminated, okay? So these are the main parties involved. And when it comes to the trust, right, you have an establishment date and a termination date. So the establishment date is the day that it actually comes into existence. So if you're setting up the trust today, today's your establishment date. And then you're going to set it up for a certain period of time. So usually we'll set it up anywhere between 1 to 100 years. So just be mindful of that, okay? So let's continue on. All right, so now there's several different types of trust, you guys, okay? There's hundreds and hundreds of different types of trust. You have to choose the best trust for you, for your family, for your organization, okay? So what I want to do is I want to break down several categories that every single trust falls under. The first category that I want to tell you is express versus implied. An express trust is a written trust, you guys. So it's in black and white. It's in that contract style that you usually are used to seeing, okay? An implied trust is a verbal agreement. So that's a verbal trust where where the grantor and the trustee sat down and they made those bylaws, okay? Now, the next one that we have is statutory versus non-statutory, okay? So with a statutory trust, there are so many state statutes and codes, right? So every single state has its own laws. Those laws are called state statutes and codes. Now, if you have a statutory trust, that means that those state statutes and codes are embedded inside of that trust, okay? Which means that you can only use that trust in that state, and your trust becomes public because it's registered with the state, okay? So there's some limitations to a statutory trust. On the contrary, you have non-statutory. So non-statutory means that there are no state statutes and codes inside of the contract, so you can use it in the entire nation, meaning all 50 states, all US territories, okay? Which is good, and your trust does not get registered with the state, okay? So you have a level of privacy there because what you want is for your trust to be private. You don't want anyone to know what your contract looks like, okay? So what's inside of it, what assets you have, who your beneficiaries are, okay? Next, we have simple versus complex. So a simple trust is shorter in nature, and the trustee is required to distribute all of the trust funds that are in there, okay? You have, the next one is complex. So with the complex trust, it's larger in nature, right? So there's more provisions. That means that there's more rules and regulations of how this trust is supposed to be operated, and the trustee is not required to distribute the trust funds to the beneficiaries, okay? So that means that the trustee can actually keep those trust funds inside of the trust to use it to build up that net worth, okay? Now, the next one that we have is discretionary versus non-discretionary. So a discretionary trust is where the trustee has full discretion to be able to make decisions for the trust that are not inside of the contract. So for example, if the trustee wanted to buy crypto, but the contract doesn't say anything about buying crypto, they can make that decision. Versus non-discretionary means that they're limited and that they cannot make decisions that are not embedded inside of the trust contract, okay? Now, then the last one that I want to tell you guys about is revocable versus irrevocable. So with a revocable trust, and when we're talking about revocable and irrevocable, we are only referring to one party in this contract. Remember, I told you there's three parties, okay? So the one party that we're referring to is the grantor, okay, which is the creator. So what we're saying is that with a revocable trust, the grantor is able to revoke things, okay? So what are they able to revoke? Well, they're able to terminate the trust or revoke the trust at any point in time. They are able to take assets back outside of the trust, right? So if they were to put their property, they can take it back. They're able to remove the trustees and the beneficiaries. They're able to make amendments to the trust, okay? So that is what they're able to do. Now, unfortunately, because they're able to make all of these changes, a revocable trust is seen as their alter ego, which means that it's seen as dumb, right? Usually with a revocable trust, that person is using their personal social security number in order to operate that revocable trust, okay? Because it's seen as their alter ego, the assets that you place inside of a revocable trust are not protected. I repeat, they are not protected, meaning that if you have creditors, right, those creditors can come after the assets that are inside of the revocable trust. So if the grantor or the trustee has creditors, those creditors can come and try to take those assets. So a revocable trust only protects from probate, right? Only helps you avoid probate pretty much, okay? So with a revocable trust, right, if you were to end up in a lawsuit, right, the judge can decide to pierce through that trust. If the judge pierces through a revocable trust, that means they're going to force you to produce the trust in court. If they force you to do that, that means that that trust now becomes a part of the public records, which means that everyone is able to see the contents, what's inside of the trust, okay? So they're able to see every single page of the trust, what assets you've placed inside of the trust, who your beneficiaries are, okay? So just be mindful of that. And now I'll tell you about the irrevocable trust, okay? So with an irrevocable trust, right? Remember, we're talking about the grantor. So the grantor slash creator, they have what we call irrevocability. So that means that they cannot make any amendments or changes to the trust. They cannot take back any assets. They cannot remove the trustees or the beneficiaries, okay? So, and they can't terminate the trust even if they wanted to terminate the trust, okay? So that is extremely powerful, because if the grantor, which is the creator, can't do any of that stuff because they have no power and no control, right? That means that that trust is now seen as a separate entity from that person. Okay, so with the irrevocable trust, that irrevocable trust is a separate entity. It operates off of its own EIN, okay? It seems totally separate from you, which is beautiful because your assets will then now be fully protected, 100%. Why? Because those creditors that belong to or going after the the grantor and the trustee, those creditors cannot come after your irrevocable trust. They can try, but they will not be successful, okay? So that is a good thing because your assets are fully protected, okay? That means that that house, that car, the jewelry, whatever it is that you have in there is going to be protected, okay? And if there was an attempt with the lawsuit, right? With an irrevocable trust, the judge will decide not to pierce through an irrevocable trust, okay, due to contract law. So you just want to be mindful of that, right? Because you don't want your trust being in the public records. You don't want your trust being visible out there for everyone to know what's inside of your trust, okay? Or what assets that you have inside of the trust, okay? So that is the different types of trust and the different categories. So every single trust falls in those categories, okay? So let's continue on. So now, what are the steps that you need to take in order to create a trust? Okay, let's talk about that because that's so vitally important. So the first step is that you need to determine what type of trust that you want, right? Because I just gave you a list of a bunch of different categories. So the type of trust that I recommend is a trust that is express, meaning that it's written, that is complex in nature, that is discretionary, and that is irrevocable, okay? So that is so important. Now that type of trust is what we call a bulletproof trust, okay? With the bulletproof trust, right? Like I said, it's impenetrable, so they can try to sue, okay? They can attempt. But that's the type of trust that you want if you really want to protect the assets that you're acquiring. Because a lot of us were buying houses, cars, we got stocks, we got bonds, we got crypto, we got all this stuff. And all of these assets are in our personal name. And they shouldn't be in our personal name because the minute that somebody decides to sue us, they can take those assets away from us, okay? So just be mindful of that. So what I want you to do is do your due diligence, do your research, and figure out what's the best type of trust for you and your family. What's the best type of trust for your business organization? Okay, let's go to the next one, which is 2, right? So what you want to do next is you want to determine the name for your trust. So just like how when you were born and your parents gave you a name, the trust is also going to be born. You also have to give the trust a name. So what are you going to name the trust, right? So you have to choose a name. Now, the 2 things that I want to tell you about when you're choosing a name is 1, do not name the trust after yourself, please. Please, please, please. Okay. A lot of people make this mistake. If their name is John Smith, they're going to name the trust the John Smith Trust. That's the biggest mistake ever because you want your trust to be private. Okay. The second thing is that you don't want people to know that you're associated with the trust. Okay. So with that being said, do not name the trust after yourself. Okay. Give it a very unique, distinct name. Some people like to use their last names, which is totally fine because last names are very common, but do not use the combination of first and last, okay? The next thing when it comes to names is that the trust name doesn't have to end in the word trust, okay? So you don't want people to even know the type of entity that it is, okay? So let their minds wander. Let them think that it's a corporation or an LLC or any of these other types of entities, okay? All right, so the next thing is that you need to appoint the different parties. Remember, I spoke to you guys about 3 different parties, right? 3 different parties. So the grantor, the trustee, the beneficiary, okay? You have to appoint people in those positions. Now, with the grantor, that's the creator of the trust, okay? If you are creating an irrevocable trust, you cannot be the grantor and the trustee. You have to only serve in one position. The grantor has no power, no control. The trustee has all the power, all the control. So if you want that bulletproof trust, which is an irrevocable trust, then you're going to have to choose someone else to be your grantor, okay? This grantor obviously has to be 18 years or older, and they have to be able to sign the trust, okay? In order for the trust to be executed. Now, the trustee, you have to choose who's going to be the trustee. Typically, we choose ourselves, right? Why? Because we want to maintain control over those assets. If we're going to put a house, if we're going to put a car, if we're going to put cash money in the account, then we want to be able to have control. So we'll appoint ourselves as the trustee. The next is the beneficiaries. So your beneficiaries can be entities. They can also be your children. So typically they are your children, your next of kin, or your loved ones that you want to inherit the assets that are inside of the trust. And then the last position is a successor trustee. That is the person who's going to be taking over after you in the event that something happens to you. So if something happened to you where you didn't wake up tomorrow, you need to have someone in line ready to go that's going to continue to operate the trust. They're going to pick up where you left off. That is your successor trustee, okay? So typically we'll put our adult children in that position. Number 3 is for us to actually create the contract. Now, in the contract, we're going to put provisions. Those are the rules and regulations of how we want the trust to operate. In those provisions, some of them we actually put spendthrift provisions. Those are where you want to actually control the money from the grave, right? So you want to put the trust in a position to where the beneficiaries are not going to blow all the money that's inside of the trust. So you're going to give them restrictions on what they can spend the money on and what they cannot spend the money on. You can also put age restrictions on when they can start receiving distributions. So there's so much that you can do in this contract. So it's so important. What's inside of the contract is so important, okay? All of your provisions, okay? That's what protects the assets. Now, once you're done finalizing your contract, then you have to get it notarized, okay? So there's 2 signatures that are required. It's the grantor signature and the trustee signature. And the witness is going to be a notary public, and that notary public is going to put their seal. So they're going to sign and seal, and that's going to legalize your trust. So now that your trust is legalized, you can start operating it, okay? When you start operating the trust, the first thing that you want to do is you want to open up that trust fund. That is the bank account that's associated with the trust, because the money that is inside of the trust is labeled trust funds, okay? So now the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to open up that bank account. There's 2 things that we need. The first thing is a certificate of trust. The certificate of trust is proof of identity that the trust exists. So just like how you walk around with a driver's license or a state ID, the trust is also going to be operating with identification as well, which is the certificate of trust, okay? So you're going to bring that plus the EIN number that you receive from the IRS, that 9-digit number that is quote unquote just like a Social Security. You're going to bring those 2 things with you to the bank. Now, every single bank doesn't offer trust accounts, so you have to do your research and choose a bank that does. When you're actually opening up these accounts, right, you can choose any financial institution, like I said, that offers trust accounts. Those could be banks, credit unions. They can also be firms like brokerage firms, okay? Now, the types of accounts is a checking account, a savings account, a money market account, a cash management account, brokerage account. Those types of accounts, they are they can be associated as trust accounts, okay? Now, what you're going to do is you're going to open up that account. You're going to fund that account. So you're going to fund it with whatever the minimum is, okay? So you can fund it with whatever amount that you want as long as you meet the minimum for the bank. So some of these banks, their minimum is 100, 500, 1,000. It just depends on the bank. So as long as you meet that threshold, then you're able to open up your account, and then you can later on start putting trust funds into that trust account, okay? Now, the next thing, after you have opened up your trust fund and you have a place where you can secure that money, what you want to do is you want to transfer your assets into the trust. This is the most important step. This is the step that I've seen so many people fail at, right? Where they'll set up a trust, but they'll never transfer their assets into the trust. There is a lot of other steps involved when transferring your assets, okay? I'll give you one example. Now, transferring your assets is key. So let's just say that you have a primary residence, right? A lot of us, we don't know that that we're in the public records when it comes to our primary residence, right? Anyone can look up your who owns your house. All they have to do is go down to the county website, do a property search, put your name or put the address of the house, and boom, they're able to find who the homeowner is, their contact information, everything is there, right? And so that is what you want to avoid. You want to remove yourself from the public records, remove yourself as the owner of that house. When you purchase that house, you receive the deed. So what you have to do is you have to re-deed that property into the name of the trust. So what we do is we use quit claim deeds, and we'll deed it over from our personal name into the name of the trust. So now let's just say that your trust is called Sunflower Vision, right? It's two random words, right? No one knows that you are associated with Sunflower Vision. So when they look on the public records, all they can see is that whoever owns this house right here on Main Street, that person or entity, their name is Sunflower Vision. That is the position that you want to put yourself in, right? Because now you have what we call obscurity. You have total privacy. People are not going to be able to come after what you have because they don't know what you have, because what you have is in a trust. Let's continue on. The number one reason why you want to actually set up a trust is for asset protection, you guys. That is so important. So what can a trust protect you from? It can protect you from bankruptcies, from divorce, from foreclosures, from heavy taxations, from lawsuits, from probate, right? Those are the main things, and a list of others, but mainly that's what you can protect yourself from, right? So for example, divorce. Divorce is a transfer of wealth. One person will end up with nothing, the other person will end up with everything in certain situations. So you need to protect yourself from a divorce, right? So how do you do that? You set up a trust, you place your assets in a trust, right? And 10, 15 years into the future, if that ever happens, the divorce is a lawsuit between those two spouses. So they can't pull a trust into a divorce, meaning that that trust plus all of the houses, cash, and stocks and everything that you have inside of that trust cannot be pulled into the divorce. Why? Because you are not the trust, and the trust is not you. You're the person that is included in that divorce. So anything that's in your personal name, meaning the house that's in your personal name, the car that's in your personal name, the checking account with the cash money that's in your personal name, that's what's going to be included, but not the trust. Another thing is heavy taxations. A lot of us are giving half of our money away to the government. Why? Because we are not properly structured, because we're not playing the game the right way. That's why you're giving 50 to 60% away to the IRS. But once you have the tools, you can play the game the right way. The IRS allows you to donate up to 60% of your annual gross income to the trust. 60%. So if you're making $100,000, you can donate $60,000 to the trust. And then you're only going to be taxed on $40,000 instead of $100,000. That's extremely powerful. But like I said, you need the tools to play the game the right way. Another one is lawsuits. We live in such a sue-friendly country. We live in the United States. Everybody wants to sue us. Your coworker, your neighbor, your blood brother and sister, everybody wants to sue you. Do not wait until you're getting sued to protect yourself from a lawsuit. That is what I see a lot of people do. I'll have a conversation with somebody, and then a year later, they're like, hey, Christina, a year later, hey, Christina, I'm ready to set up a trust. Oh, okay, all right. Because I'm being sued. Don't let that be you. Prepare. So protect yourself now. Protect the house now. Protect the car now. protect the 6 figures in the bank account now. Okay? Now, probate, right? So a lot of us, we don't even know what probate is, which is, it's a little sad, right? So let me ask you a question. My question to you is, right, you have this big, beautiful house. You got a 30-year mortgage. You got the white picket fence. You got the dog. You got the kids, everything, right? This house is in your personal name. If you didn't wake up tomorrow, how do you expect that house that's in your personal name to be transferred, right? The title, the deed, to be transferred to your child's name, to your kids, your spouse, your next of kin, whoever you want to inherit that house? How do you expect that to happen? Somebody come off mute, let me know. I know I'm not by myself here. Come on now, guys.
It's either through a will or a trust. But a will
Okay.
has to go through probate court.
Exactly. Yes. So he said it's either a will or a trust, right? A trust is not going to transfer that property to your kid's name. No. A will is not going to transfer that property to your kid's name, okay? The legal transfer has to be through a judge. A judge is going to transfer that property to your kid's name. So a lot of us, we have bought into this lie that our house is automatically going to go to our children. That is the biggest, fattest lie that I've seen out here in society. It is not automatic. A lot of people are like, oh, I have a will. A will is a wish list, you guys. What is a will? A will is a wish list. Well, so what are you putting on the will? On the will, you putting, I wish my daughter will get my house. There's no guarantee there. I wish my son will get all the cash in my bank account. There's no guarantee there. That is a wish list. So who's going to carry out the wish list? The judge. It's going to be up to the judge if your son or daughter gets your house. That judge doesn't know you at all. That judge doesn't know your son, your daughter. But yet, you decided not to have your affairs in order, and you decided to leave it up to the judge. Because right now, the way that you're operating, with that house being in your personal name, that's what's going to end up happening. That means that your kids are going to end up in probate. So a lot of us, we don't even know what probate is. So let me break it down to you, right? Because so many of us, like our kids are losing their inheritance. The houses are being auctioned off on the county steps because that's what the judges have decided. So a lot of us, we don't know that we're going to end up with an estate anyways. You either going to create it now while you're living, or you're going to let the state do it for you. So a lot of us, we didn't know that if we didn't wake up tomorrow and we have all of these assets, meaning we have a house, a car, cash, stocks, what happens is the state where we're a resident, that state is going to create an estate for us. So if you're a resident of Texas, Texas is going to create an estate for you. They're going to call it your name, John Smith. Your name is John Smith. They're going to call it the John Smith estate. They're going to transfer your house in that state. They're going to transfer your car into that estate. They're going to transfer all the money in that estate. Right? So you're going to end up with one anyways. You're either going to decide to do it now while you're living, so you can control what happens to the assets, or you're going to let the state of Texas do it for you and let them control what happens to the assets.
So, Christina, are you telling me that a will isn't worth the paper it's written on?
So everything that's inside of a will can be in your trust estate. That's what I'm telling you. So I'm not saying that it's not a legal document. It is.
You know me, I'm just here to make trouble as usual. I haven't seen you in a while.
I know I'm always missing in action, which is a good thing. All right, guys. So you can decide, right? If you want to create your trust now while you're living, or wait until they create your trust when you're dead, okay? Now, what happens when the state creates it for you? Well, once they create your estate, all of your assets are transferred, and now your estate needs to be represented in probate court. He said it. And you're going to end up in probate court, right? So now what happens in probate court is your estate needs to be represented by a probate attorney, and it's going to go through the probate process, and the judge is going to decide, where those assets go, right? And so when you're going through the probate process, the first thing that happens is your estate needs to settle the liabilities. What the hell does that mean? That means that all of those creditors that you owe money to, the banks, everybody, the utility companies, the hospital. Remember, at the end of life, what happens? What happens at the end of life? Well, you end up in a hospital, the ICU. Your ICU bill could be $300,000. You never know. You end up in a nursing home. Let's be real, right? You racking up a lot of medical bills at the end of life. You don't even know what you're going to end up with because you're not here anymore. You've transitioned.
So, does that also mean I'm going to lose my money to Medicaid and Medicare?
Yeah. I've seen it so many times where Medicaid, Medicare, they go ahead and, they go after your assets. Why? Because at the end of life, when you're in the nursing home, who's paying for it? Medicare, right? And so what do they want? They want your house. So you need to be mindful of that. So now, the first thing that happens in the probate process is the judge is going to settle those liabilities. That means all of your debt needs to be paid. Everybody that you owed from kindergarten up until when you kick the bucket, they need to be paid. Okay, so that money starts coming out of your estate. So you thought your kids was going to get everything. No. Now, after all of your debt is paid, right? Then what happens? The probate attorney is going to take their fees. They're representing your estate. And then after that, the probate court, they have fees. So everybody has their hand in your estate. They're going to get paid out. And whatever is left over is what your children get. Your children get the leftovers. And I have seen it so many times where we're doing our children a disservice because our children, instead of them grieving properly, they are inside a court fighting each other or fighting the system in order to keep mom and dad's house. But the judge decided to sell the house because they needed to pay Medicare, because they needed to pay the ICU bill, because they needed to pay a student loan debt that you had. They sold your house for a $60,000 student loan debt. Why? Because we allowed it. Why are we allowing this to happen? Because we don't have the right information, because we're not playing the game right, because we don't have the tools. Why don't we get the damn tools that we need to play the game the right way then? So probate is avoidable, meaning that we're all going to end up in probate. We're all going to end up in probate. The only way to avoid probate is if you set up a trust, if you create your own estate now while you're living. Do you see? Because if you create your own estate now while you're living, you can avoid that entire process, meaning that you create your trust, you put your house inside of the trust. So now the house is not owned by you. The car is not owned by you. The bank account with 6 figures is not owned by you. None of that stuff is owned by you. It's owned by the trust, right? Which is beautiful. Because now the trust owns everything and you control the trust, which means that you control everything. So now that you put yourself in that situation, guess what happens if you didn't wake up tomorrow? If you didn't wake up tomorrow, your successor trustee is going to take over for you. They're going to continue to operate the trust. They're going to continue to control the assets. Your children are going to continue to benefit from the trust. They're going to receive distributions. So your children get to grieve in peace. They don't even have to go through court because the trust still exists. You the one that expired. The trust didn't expire. The trust is good for another 100 years. The trust is designed to outlive you. And guess what happens to that debt that you had? You had credit card debt. You had student loan debt. Hospital bills. All of that debt dies with you. Because you are the one that was liable for that debt, not the trust. So those creditors cannot come after your trust estate. They don't even know the name of your trust. That's the position that you want to put yourself in.
What about when it comes to those grubby, hungry relatives, siblings, who we all have them, that upon that termination, oh, I'm going to get this and I'm going to get that. How does the trust prevent them from doing that?
So anyone who is going to benefit from any assets that you place inside of the trust, they have to be named as beneficiaries and they have to be holders of trust certificate units. So if they're not a holder of a trust certificate unit, they cannot come after your assets just because they're your sibling. We've seen it all the time. We've seen it all the time. How many times have we seen it where celebrities, they kick the bucket and their brothers and sisters and everybody fighting over everything? So let's continue on, you guys. I'm going to land this plane. All right, so let's talk about the wealth building formula, okay? This is what you guys came for tonight. So I have 3 pillars here. I have structure, credit, and invest, okay? So let's talk about structure because it's so important for you to be structured the right way. That is what we're talking about here. We're talking about structure, okay? So with that, if you don't have a trust within your structure, you need to get restructured, okay? A lot of us, we're business owners. We have LLCs. We have corporations, S Corps, C Corps, JVs, all this stuff, right? If you don't have a trust within your structure, you better get one, okay? So let's talk about it. Now, I recommend these different types of trusts: a business trust, a family trust, and a tax-exempt trust, okay? You want to, within your structure, you want to have a for-profit and a nonprofit. That is how you're going to reduce your heavy taxes, and that is how you're going to play this game the right way, by having a for-profit and a nonprofit, okay? So let me break down every single trust. The first trust is a business trust. How do you use this trust? You can use it in two ways. The first way that you can use it is as a holding company, which means that it is non-operational, okay? It's not operational, so it doesn't offer any products or services. The reason for that type of structure is for it to hold assets, meaning that it is designed to control other legal entities like your LLCs, okay? So that is one way. The second way to operate a business trust is as a traditional business. So for example, if you wanted to, start a laundromat, if you have an e-com company, if you have a real estate investment company, a trucking company, whatever it is, right? You can set up a business trust instead of going the traditional route of opening up an LLC or a corporation, and you can operate your business under a trust structure, okay? That means that it's offering products and services out there to the community, out here in society, okay? So those are the two ways that you can operate that type of trust, okay? So now, for example, right? With a business trust, right? So if you're going to operate it like a holding company, what's going to happen is, because a lot of us, right, we are the owners of our business. That is the biggest liability ever. You do not want to be the owner, or let's just call it authorized member. You don't want to be the authorized member of your LLC. Okay, so what does LLC stand for? And I want to hear it from you guys. What does LLC stand for?
Limited liability.
Oh, who said that?
Raphael.
Raphael, what's up? Okay, he said limited liability company, right?
Yep.
So you hear it in the actual name, limited liability. Paul said it too. Thank you, Paul. Appreciate you. So you hear it in the actual name, right? So you hear the term limited. So what the hell do we mean by this, right? So if the company has limited liability, if something goes down, right? If your company is sued, who do you think has the other half of that limited liability?
You.
Exactly. Who said that? Sabrina.
Yes,
Okay.
ma'am.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. She is absolutely right. You. Why? Because you're the authorized member. Why? Because you decided to put yourself, you decided to list yourself on the Secretary of State as the authorized member. So you decided to sign up for the other half of that liability of the LLC. So if somebody decides to sue your LLC and your LLC only has half of the liability and your LLC can't cover the liability,
It's gonna pass through.
that means that if it ends up in litigation and that LLC can't cover, that judge is going to pierce through that corporate veil. You have this little thing right here called a corporate veil. You thought you was fully protected. No, baby, right? So the judge is going to pierce through that corporate veil and go straight after the owner of that business. So let's just say you got a judgment for $500,000. Guess what, business owner? They coming after you for the $500,000. Because that person that was your customer, they won that lawsuit for $500,000. So now it's time for you to pay up since your business account ain't showing that much. And since they decided to pierce through the corporate veil, the judge pierced through the corporate veil. The judge is coming after you. What is going to happen? They are going to garnish your bank account. Any bank account that has your name in it, any and all bank accounts that have your name in it, they're going to garnish it. If you have W-2 income, they're going to garnish it. Whatever assets that you have, consider it done. They've seized your house where your children live. Your children sleep there every single night. They've seized it. Your car, any jewelry, whatever it is that you got, gone. You've seen it. I don't have to explain this to you. I'm just here to remind you. You've seen it. Is that what you want? I didn't think so. So as of today, You are no longer liable for that LLC. What you need to do is take your name off of it. You need to put a business trust as the owner of that LLC. Because now what? They're going to go after the business trust. They're not going to go after you. So your kids get to sleep comfortable at night, knowing that nobody's going to take their home away because mom and dad is an entrepreneur and they're doing business. So what you need to do is you need to go straight down to the Secretary of State's website. You need to do an amendment to those articles of organization when you created that LLC. You need to remove yourself as the authorized member of that LLC. You need to add the business trust as the authorized member, as the new authorized member of that LLC. Once that amendment is processed, now the Secretary of State is going to show that there's a holding company, which is a business trust. They're going to show an entity's name. What entity name we've been using? Sunflower Vision. It's going to show Sunflower Vision. Who the hell is Sunflower Vision? And how can we get a hold of them? But no, you busy here having your name on there so they could get a hold of you, so they could find you and come after you. No, we're done with that. As of today, it's 2025, baby. We got to do things differently, not like how we've been doing it. How do you expect to change if you've been doing the same thing over and over again? No. The level up is real. We got to get restructured. So yes, everybody needs, if you are an entrepreneur, a business owner, you out here selling products, you out here delivering services, you need to have a business trust that is 100% liable for the business. 100%. That means you got 0% liability. That's powerful. So now that the LLC is owned by the business trust, any income that comes in from the LLC can automatically be distributed to the business trust. So if $100,000 came into the LLC, it could automatically be distributed to the business trust. The thing that I love about these trusts is the way that they're taxed, right? They're taxed very sexy. The first thing is that you as a person, you're taxed on a 1040. The trust is a separate entity from you. The trust is taxed as a 1041. So you know how with your LLC, you putting it as a Schedule C and it's on your 1040? We don't play those kind of games. So the trust is separated from you. It's got its own name and its own EIN. Okay? So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you spend the money first and you're taxed on the leftovers. That's not how we are taxed, right? How are we taxed as 1040 people? They take the money first, they withhold it, and they give us the leftovers. So do you want to keep receiving leftovers? Or do you want to flip the script and now you blow all of it on your expenses? We call them administrative expenses. We call them OPEX, operating expenses. You got a lot of operating expenses. I know I do. So, do you want to have those operating expenses and then you pay taxes on whatever is left over? Absolutely. So if $100,000 comes in, right? So if it's generated from the LLC and the LLC does the owner's draw and does a K-1 distribution to the business trust, then the $100,000 comes into the business trust. You have $100,000 in the business trust. But guess what? We just said it. You got OPEX, you have operating expenses, whatever those expenses are. It could be 50,000, 60,000, 70,000, whatever it is. Let's just say that it's 20,000. right? You got 20,000 in expenses out of that 100. So now you got 80,000 left that you got to pay taxes on. So what do you do? Well, like I said, with the trust, it's very sexy. The trust has what? Beneficiaries. So if the trust distributes to the beneficiary, the trust doesn't have to pay taxes on that distribution. So what the trust is going to do is the trust is going to distribute that $80,000, the whole thing, everything, to the beneficiary. And now how much taxes does the trust have to pay? 0. 0% tax liability. Why? Because 100% of it went out. 100,000 came in, 20,000 was for expenses, 80,000 was for distributions. There's nothing left. So now the business trust is done paying taxes. Okay? But that 80,000 went somewhere, didn't it? Where did it go? It went to the beneficiary. Who's the beneficiary? The beneficiary is the family trust. Your beneficiaries can be entities. Your beneficiaries can also be natural people like me and you and your children and your grandchildren. Okay? So the way that we structure it is our beneficiary of the business trust is our family trust. That's an entity. So now that 80,000 went from the business trust to the family trust. Okay. So the business trust is done paying taxes. The 80,000 was just received into the family trust as income. That 80,000 that belongs to the family trust now as a distribution, received as a distribution, they have to pay taxes on that. So a trust can pay anywhere between 10% upwards of 37% in taxes, depending on what comes in. Okay? Why would we structure it this way? Well, if you are a business owner, an entrepreneur, right? A sole proprietor, whatever fancy name you want to use, that money is being generated to provide for your family, right? To keep the lights on, pay the mortgage, groceries, kids' tuition, whatever it is. So that's why the family trust is the beneficiary, because that money needs to flow straight from the business into the family to cover the family expenses that are called what? Operating expenses. Why? Because there's assets that are inside of that family trust, like your primary residence. All of the utilities, lights, water, gas, internet, maintenance, insurance are covered by the family trust because that asset is inside of the trust. Once that asset is owned by the trust, it is the trust's financial responsibility to pay for everything associated with that asset, including the property taxes. Do you see where we're getting with this? So 80,000 came in. What are we going to do? We have operating expenses. I just explained them to you, okay? Whatever assets. So you are the trustee. You control the assets. The assets have expenses associated with it. Those expenses are taken out directly from the trust fund, okay? Whatever your administrative expenses are, right? Compensating. So whatever your operating expenses are, right? 80,000 came in. Let's just say your operating expenses are $70,000, right? Costs a lot. Now you have $10,000 that's left. So that's $70,000. Your operating expenses is 100% tax deductible. Spend the money first. 100% tax deductible. So now you have $10,000 that's left. You can easily pay 10% on $10,000 if that's what you want to do. Beautiful. Or another thing that you can do is something that we call contribution. So what are you contributing? You are doing what we call a charitable contribution. Why? Because you have a nonprofit within your structure. And you can do a charitable contribution to your nonprofit. That is also 100% tax deductible. So instead of paying the $1,000 on the 10, you can contribute the 10 to the tax-exempt nonprofit trust. And so now the tax-exempt nonprofit trust, I'll break it down for you in just a moment. That trust is going to receive that $10,000 as a donation. As long as it receives it as a donation, you don't have to pay taxes on donations, right? So as long as it's labeled, whatever's coming into that organization, if it's labeled as a donation or a tithe or a gift, you do not pay taxes on it. So proper documentation is essential in this process. Record keeping is essential when you're structured like this. You have multiple entities within your structure. So now that we know that we have a nonprofit within our structure, right? Oh, wait, there's one thing I wanted to tell you, right? Now that we've did a $10,000 contribution to the nonprofit, what happens to the family trust? It's done, right? It's done paying taxes, okay? Because it had $70,000 in operating expenses, it had $10,000 in contributions, the tax liability is zero. Who is the beneficiary of the family trust? Your children, right? Their children. This is where the generational wealth happens, where your kids' are beneficiaries to a trust organization. That's where we get the term trust fund baby from. They're born into a trust organization. They're set for life. Why? Because you're doing all the hard work right now. You're making the sacrifices. You're building the legacy. You're creating the estate. So with that being said, you can put your children there as the beneficiaries of the family trust, okay? Now let's go down to the tax-exempt nonprofit because I just want to give you some information on that trust. There's different labels that we can use for this type of trust, okay? We can use church, ministry, faith-based organization, charity. So there's, you know, whatever name that you want to use, but they fall under the same category, which is a tax-exempt nonprofit trust, okay? So you're operating it like a charity. You're operating it like a ministry, right? You're operating it like a church, or a faith-based organization. And it doesn't have to be religious. It could also be educational, okay? Just like how I'm educating you right now. So with that being said, it's designated as a 508c1a, which means that it's a mandatory exception for not having to file for a 501c3. If you're a nonprofit and you want to be exempt from federal income taxes, you have to file a 501c3. You have to be a 501c3. But there is a separation between church and state. You know that. You've heard of it your entire life. in this country. So due to the separation between church and state, you are able to operate a faith-based organization and be automatically exempt from federal taxes. Federal. You can qualify to also be exempt from other taxes. That means you have to qualify, okay? Qualify for state tax exemption, for property tax exemption, for sales tax exemption, for city tax exemption. You can also qualify for those types of exemptions, okay? So as long as the money that comes in is labeled as a donation, a tithe, or a gift, you don't have to pay taxes. If, this is where your documentation comes into play. If the money that comes in is labeled as income, then anything over $5,000, you do have to file. So it's important how you document. Okay. Now, the thing that I mentioned earlier was if you're a W-2 employee, the IRS will allow you to donate your gross income, but your limit is up to 60%. So that means that you can donate up to 60% of whatever your annual gross income is to your faith-based organization. Do you know how much taxes you're going to be saving? Thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars. But like I said, you need the tools. That's the most important thing. So let's continue on. Like I said, I am landing this plane. The second thing is credit. OPM is super duper duper important, you guys. What is OPM? OPM is using other people's money. That means that you want to use the bank's money. You don't want to use your money. That's what the banks do. The banks use your money in order to build wealth, right? What happens the minute that you get paid? The minute that you get paid, the first thing that happens is the IRS is going to take their cut. After that, Medicare and Social Security are going to take their cut. And then after that, you're going to do your 401k contributions. So 4 organizations got paid before you even seen your paycheck. Right? And then where does your paycheck go? It goes straight into the bank as a direct deposit. What is the bank doing with your money? They're lending it out for mortgages, for car notes, car loans, student loans. And so they're using OPM. They're using your money. They've leveraged it already. So if the banks are getting rich using your money, do you think that you also should be getting rich using their money? Yes, they have the blueprint laid out for you. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. So with a trust, you can build business credit. That's a beautiful process, okay? So it's just like the credit that you have with your LLCs and your corporation. So you know how the businesses have EIN numbers? You are going to be building credit off of your EIN. So that's what you want to do. You want to put yourself in a position to where you can leverage a second credit profile. You don't only want to be using your personal credit. You want to use business credit as well, because then you'll qualify for higher lines of credit. It's powerful. So put yourself in that mindset to where you're going to be using OPM, other people's money, meaning the bank's money. The next one is invest. So these are the 2 assets that I love the most and that I recommend everybody acquire. The first one is an index universal life insurance policy. The second one is real estate. Let's talk about the first one. The first one, to make it short and sweet, we call it an IUL. IUL, Index Universal Life. This is a life insurance policy. A lot of people think that life insurance is supposed to be used when they are dead. Life insurance is supposed to be utilized when you are living. That's why it's called life insurance. It's not called dead insurance. There's so many living benefits to life insurance. So what are the living benefits? Well, with this policy, right, not only does it insure your life, that means it insures your life, meaning that if something were to happen to you, then there's a death benefit that's associated with this policy, and they will pay out the beneficiary the death benefit. With this policy, you also have long-term care if anything happens to you where you become disabled, right? You can't work no more. It's tax-free. That means any money that you have coming into this policy is not being taxed. This is a liquid asset. That means that all of the money that you have in this policy is liquid. And this policy is building cash value. Cash value is a whole separate account outside of your death benefit. And that money is just going to be accumulated in there, and it's going to be compounding. Do you know how important compound interest is? That's how you get rich. It's going to be compounding. Why and how? Let's answer those questions, right? So, how? You're going to be paying your premiums, okay? You have premiums for these policies. You can pay them monthly. You can pay them yearly, quarterly, however you want. Now, a percentage of that premium payment, so let's just say it's the 80-20 split. 20% goes to the carrier for doing business, for the cost of insurance. The other 80% is going to go straight to your cash value, and it's going to be accumulating, and it's going to earn compound interest. How does it earn compound interest? Remember, look at the name of the policy. Index Universal Life. What are we referring to when we are talking about an index? An index is referring to an indice. An indice is a section in the stock market. You have many indices in the stock market. You have the Dow Jones. You have the NASDAQ. You have the S&P 500. Those are index. So your cash value is going to mirror the index. So let's just say that it's the S&P 500. S&P stands for Standard & Poor's 500, which is the top 500 companies in this country. So the S&P 500 tracks the top 500 companies. Usually, you can earn, let's just say 8 to 10%. This is annually. So what happens is whatever is inside of your cash value, your money is not inside of the stock market. Why? Because the stock market is considered risky. Okay, I'm listening. Your money is not directly inside of the stock market like with all those other financial instruments that you have. But it's going to mirror the stock market, and you're going to get the same returns. Meaning that if the S&P 500 did 9%, the carrier of the life insurance policy is going to match that, and they're going to give you 9% on your cash value. Now, there is a cap. So the cap is usually at 12. which is okay, right? I'd rather get 12. And the beautiful thing about that is if the stock market takes a dip, you don't lose any money because your floor is 0. So you'll make 0, but it's better than accumulating a negative. So that's extremely powerful, right? So now with this type of policy, you want the trust to be the owner, the payer. You want the trust to be the owner of the policy, the payer of the premiums, and listed as the beneficiary of the policy. That's extremely, extremely powerful. So in a minute, I'll show you how to marry the two, the trust and the IUL policy. Now, the next one is real estate. A trust, you want to put the trust in position to where it is going to sustain itself. You don't want to be pouring into the trust, okay? You don't want to be pouring and pouring and pouring into the trust organization, your paycheck, okay? So what you want is the trust to build up its portfolio and to sustain itself and to provide for itself, right? And for the beneficiaries. So a trust can own real estate. A trust can get a mortgage, just like how you can own real estate and get a mortgage. So the strategy that we use for real estate is we acquire multifamily, okay? And so what you want is for the trust to get a home that has 3, 4, 5 units, right? Let's just say it's a duplex, triplex, quad, whatever, right? And so the trust is going to get a DSCR loan, debt service coverage ratio loan. That is a loan specifically for an investment property. So now the trust just acquired a mortgage. It was a DSCR for a multifamily unit. The DSCR covers up to 80%. So if the DSCR covers 80% of the purchase price, where are you going to get the other 20% from? Well, remember, we just said use OPM, other people's money. So you're going to get it from building business credit. And so let's say that you built up the business credit and now you have credit cards, right? You can now have credit cards and lines of credit. So let's just say that you got a credit card for $50,000. You're going to use that credit card. What you're going to do is you're going to liquidate that credit card with the $50,000. And you're going to use that $50,000 as a down payment. But before you use that $50,000 as a down payment, what you're going to do is you're going to funnel that money into your index universal life insurance policy. Why? Because that money, that $50,000 that you just liquidated from your credit card, right, is going to be funneled into your IUL. So your cash value is going to go up by $50,000. That $50,000 that's sitting now in your IUL in the cash value is going to earn compound interest. You need to put your money in places where it's going to make money. You need to put your money in places to where every single dollar goes out and brings back friends. It brings back 10 cents, 15 cents, 20 cents. That's where you need to park your money. So that $50,000, before you utilize it and park it in real estate, you're also going to park it in your IUL policy. So now that $50,000 that you just liquidated from your credit card is sitting in your IUL. How the hell are you going to get it out? You're going to request a loan from the insurance carrier. Remember, I told you the IUL is liquid. So the insurance carrier, they're going to look, they're going to look inside of your IUL. They're going to look at your cash value, and they're going to say to themselves, yeah, of course I'll be able to lend, you know, to lend the money. And so what they're going to do is they're going to issue you a loan, but the loan is not going to come from your cash value. The loan is going to come from the life insurance carrier's reserves. It's going to come from their bank account. So your money, your $50,000 is still sitting inside of the cash value. And the life insurance company just did a direct deposit and sent, and it's a certain percentage, right? Let's just say they sent $49,000 straight into your account. So now you have that $49,000 liquid inside of your bank account, but your $50,000 is working for you, earning compound interest in the cash value of your IUL. So now what we're going to do is we're going to use that $49,000 as the down payment for that cash flowing property that we're about to acquire. And that's where the 20% is going to come from. So what have we just done? We just acquired a property that is a cash cow, that is cash flowing, and we acquired it zero down. We did not use any of our own money. We used OPM, other people's money. We used the mortgage company's money with the DSCR loan for the 80%. And we used the credit card company for the 20%. And so we literally, that 50,000, we just parked it in two places. We parked it first in the IUL as compounding, and then we parked it inside of real estate as cash flowing. That is the name of the game. The only way that you're able to acquire this is by having a mindset shift. By you putting yourself in a position to where you decide, hey, I'm going to pay myself first. Hey, I'm going to park this money in assets that are producing cash, income producing assets. So it is going to take a mindset shift for you to be able to adopt this, what I'm telling you. For you to be able to get structured the right way. For you to be able to put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. It's extremely powerful. So now, with the real estate, right? The real estate is producing income every single month, right? On the first of the month, you're getting $5,000, right? What are you going to do with that $5,000? The first thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and pay the mortgage. The first thing that we want to do is we want to go ahead and pay the credit card and the utilities and this and the that. No, you're not going to pay that mortgage company first. You're going to pay yourself first. The way that you're going to do that is by that cash flow is going to go straight into your IUL. So that $5,000 is going to go straight into your index universal life insurance policy. Your cash value went up by $5,000. But now you need to pay the mortgage, right? So you're going to borrow it back out. So you're going to borrow, let's just say, $4,800, right? Because they don't let you borrow 100%. It's upwards of like 92. So depending on the carrier. So you just cash flowed. You just collected rent. $5,000. You parked it inside of the IUL policy. You borrowed it back out. You just took a loan out for $4,800. Now you're going to pay the mortgage company, the credit card, and whatever's left over is going to sit in the trust fund. And that $4,800 does not need to be paid back. is automatically deducted from the death benefit. That is extremely powerful. That is how we are going to get out of this rat race that we're in. We're literally on a hamster wheel doing the same stuff over and over and over again, expecting a change. It's not going to happen. It's not going to happen unless you change your mind, unless you decide to do something different, unless you decide to pay yourself first, unless you decide to create your trust estate now while you're living and not let Texas do it. Once you've made all of those decisions, you're putting your family in a better position. You're putting yourself in a better position to where you're not going to be living paycheck to paycheck. Why? Because you have income producing assets that you acquired zero down, that you got because you have a trust that can stand on its own 2 feet and that is separate from you and that can hold a portfolio. So put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. Because a lot of us, we never ask ourselves this question. We never, ever, ever ask ourselves, how are we going to transfer the wealth that we're creating? But we're busy here talking about and building generational wealth. So put yourself in a position to where you own nothing but control everything. That is super powerful. That is what we call stewardship, where you're being a good steward of your assets, where you're controlling and directing them and moving them in the right direction. Versus now with what you're doing. What you're doing right now is you're operating in ownership, which means that you're so proud to be the owner of that house. You're so proud to be the owner of that bank account. No. You have bought into the lies of society. Because at the end of the day, that house that you have, that house is going to outlive you. If you didn't wake up tomorrow, that house is still going to be there. So what you truly want is not ownership of the house. What you truly want is control of the house while you're living. And that's what you can get with a trust. The trust is going to own the house. You're going to control the house. Now, when we're talking about transferring wealth, right? Every single trust that you create is going to come with TCUs. TCUs stand for Trust Certificate Units. Trust certificate units are just like stock certificates. So you know how stock certificates represent ownership in a corporation? TCUs represent beneficial interest in a trust. So we don't use the term ownership because a trust is a living entity. So just like how no one can own you, no one can own a trust, but they can be a beneficiary of a trust. They can have beneficial interests in the trust. And that's what's going to happen with the TCUs. Okay, so your beneficiaries are going to be holders of TCUs. And so if the trust is terminated, then whatever assets that are in the trust, they're going to be distributed to the beneficiaries. So for example, the trust is going to create 100 trust certificates when it's established. Let's just say I'm one of your beneficiaries and you've issued me 25 trust certificate units. The trust is worth $1 million. That means that I have beneficial interest of $250,000 of that $1 million. And if the trust was to be terminated, then I will get a distribution of that $250,000. That's how you transfer wealth. Not the way that you've been tricked into thinking, which is, oh, let me go get a will. A will, like I said, is a wish list that's going to end up in probate. You don't want that. You want to be able to control the assets while you're living and even when you're dead and gone too. because you have set up the trust estate where it has provisions inside of there where you are controlling the money from the grave. Did you know that that was possible? So we never even ask ourselves, how am I going to preserve this wealth, right? I'm working my 9 to 5. I'm making 6 figures. I'm buying houses. I have a business, all this stuff, right? But we never ask ourselves, how am I going to preserve everything that I'm working so hard for? How many times have we seen it, right? To where famous families, athletes, celebrities, you've seen it on the news, right? To where they either blow their money in their lifetime, or it doesn't even last the second, even the first or second generation. And their families fighting over their inheritance. How many times have we seen it? The reason why that happens is because those celebrities, they didn't have trust within their structure. They didn't have a trust. There's 2 tools that you need in order to preserve your wealth. You need a trust and you also need life insurance. Okay, those are the 2 tools. Why? So this is what I was telling you about. Let's marry this thing. Let's put this thing together, okay? Those are the 2 tools that you need in order to preserve your wealth. Why? Because the trust has a lot of assets, right? The trust has a house, so it has homeowners insurance. The trust has a car, so it has automobile insurance. The trust has a bank account with 6 figures, it has FDIC insurance, right? So if all of the assets of the trust are insured, and you are an asset, because you are what we call a human asset. You're a human asset in the whole trust organization. Why? Because you're the trustee. You're the one who's controlling the trust. You're the one who's signing on behalf of everything. You're the one who's acquiring the assets. You're the MVP. So if anything happens to you, what do you think is going to happen to the trust? The trust is going to be devastated. The trust is going to suffer a loss. The trust is going to be like, well, what happened here? I lost my trustee. So what happens is, because the trust is devastated, the trust needs to be compensated for that loss. And the trust will be compensated for that loss because the trust took out a life insurance policy on you, the trustee. The trust was paying the premiums. The trust is listed as the owner of that life insurance policy, which means that they control the life insurance policy. You are the insured. Your life is insured. The trust been paying the premiums, and the trust is listed as the beneficiary. So if anything happens to you to where you didn't wake up, that death benefit of $2 million is going straight into the trust fund. It's going straight into the trust bank account. And the trust is now replenished with $2 million. So what the trust is going to do is the trust is going to take out a policy on every single person associated with the trust. Meaning the trust is going to take out a policy on you as the trustees and all of the future trustees and all of the beneficiaries and all of the future beneficiaries. So when a beneficiary is born into the trust organization, as soon as that baby's 30 days old, the trust is going to take out an index universal life insurance policy on that baby. That baby is a trust fund baby. We need to normalize trust fund babies in our community because trust fund babies have a bad connotation to it. Why? Because they're known for being spendthrifts. They blow in the dough. No, not here in this organization. So now that the trust has taken out an IUL policy on that baby, the trust is going to be paying those premiums. Those premiums are going to go straight into the cash value. The cash value is then going to start accumulating and earning compound interest. Let's fast forward to the future. That trust fund baby is now 18 years old. That trust fund baby needs what? They're going away to college, so they need housing, books, a car, the whole thing. So normally what they can do is they can go down to the dealership. They can take out a loan, run their credit, get into a car note, paying $1,000 a month to the dealership. Or what they can do is, because they're a trust fund baby, they can go to the trust. And if they go to the trust, they can request a loan. That is how you're able to move money around in the trust by way of loans, right? You do not pay taxes on loans. So they're going to request a loan. So the trustee and the beneficiaries, they can receive loans and they can also give loans to the trust. So that trust fund baby went to the trust and said, hey, can I have $30,000 so I can go buy my first car? So you as the trustee, you're like, okay, no problem. You write a check for $30,000, you hand it to the trust fund baby. They go and buy their car cash, right? But you executed a promissory note. You're charging them 2%, and you're saying, hey, you got to pay the trust organization monthly. Why? Because you're instilling those financial values in that beneficiary's life. So now the trust fund baby is going to start paying $200 a month to the trust organization. That's way better than $1,000 to the dealership. So that's a win-win situation. And they were only able to do that because they're a trust fund baby. So now let's just say a year into the future, they decide to default. Oh, I don't want to pay the trust $200 anymore. The default is completely okay. It was risk-free. Because the loan that was given to the trust fund baby was a risk-free loan because the money did not come from the trust fund. The money did not come from the trust directly. The money came from the Index Universal Life Insurance Policy. That means that the trustee contacted the insurance carrier for that beneficiary's IUL and requested a loan from their cash value. And the life insurance company saw, oh yeah, they got the cash value. Let's do a direct deposit into the trust fund for $30,000. And then the trustee issued the check. So the money originated from the IUL policy. The money doesn't have to be paid back to the IUL policy because it's going to be deducted from the death benefit. So it was a risk-free loan because when that trust fund baby transitions, guess what? That death benefit goes straight to the trust organization. That $3 million, it goes straight to the trust. The trust is then replenished. That is how you're going to preserve your wealth. This is how your mind needs to be thinking. This is how you need to be structured. You need to have tools in order to preserve the wealth that you're building. If you really want that wealth to last 6, 10, 15 generations into the future, which it very well can. But that's only if you have the tools. A trust, IULs. These are the books that I recommend. What Would the Rockefellers Do? That's a really, really, really good book teaching you about the marriage between trust and insurance policies. The next one is The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1 and 2. The next one is Family Wealth. So The Art of Passing the Buck, Volume 1 and 2 teaches you about trusteeship. Family Wealth teaches you about how to run your business, how to run your family like a business. All of us need to be running our family like a business. You are the CEO of your family. Your spouse is the CFO of your family. Your children, they're secretaries and treasurers. So that is a family office, and Family Wealth teaches you that. And then the last one is the complete book of trust, which teaches you about the different types of trust. Remember, I told you there's hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of different types of trust. You have to do your due diligence and your research and choose the best one for you and your family. Choose the best one for you and your business. I want to show you a quick video of a trustee that took action on the information that I shared tonight.
Well, kudos to you all. Again, Christina, it's been a wonderful experience. I've been looking at your videos on YouTube for a while. And, you know, there are a number of people offering trust these days. And, you know, I guess that's the big thing, you know, don't own anything, control everything. That kind of, I didn't say it correctly, but that is the sentiment. And so it seems like the playing field is being leveled now from the rich and people who weren't privy to this information. So thank you for being such a great asset to a community that didn't have this information. And you made it so simple. Thank you for the recordings. Thank you for the step-by-step instructions, things that we can go back and look at. So we do appreciate you. And thank you, Mondo. That was a great explanation of infinite banking. I know a number of people are talking about that, but they make it so complex. And his presentation was nice and succinct and very informative. So this has been an overall great experience. I definitely will recommend you to others.
So take action on the information that I shared with you guys tonight. It could be your new way of doing business, you guys. Remember, do not be the authorized member of your LLC. It can help you make more profit in your business, and it can help solve a lot of the problems that you have dealing with asset protection and liability. So you want to think about this like, you want to think about yourself and your organization like a big business, right? You're not no little small mom and pop shop. You are a huge organization here. So just like how Google and all of these different companies, Amazon, Facebook, all of them, just like how they have trust within their structure. If you go on Google right now, you go scroll down, it'll show you Google Trust. If they have trust within your structure, do you think that you also should have trust within your structure? Didn't we hear Donald Trump say that he doesn't pay taxes because he's smart? Why? Because he has a trust within his structure. Didn't we hear Warren Buffett say that he pays less taxes than his secretary? How is that possible? Because he has trust within his structure. You also need trust within your structure. One of the misconceptions that I hear all the time is, oh, you need $1 million in order to have a trust. That is the biggest, fattest lie ever. You do not need $1 million. You can start right now where you are today. So let's work together, you guys. I do have a program where I show you step by step on how to actually create the trust that I was explaining. So I explained to you 3 different types of trust that I feel is the most important in order for you to get restructured, which is the business trust, the family trust, and the nonprofit. So my first offer is you can do it yourself with our course. I have an online course. It has 43 video modules, and you are able to get instant access to the three trust template. So I show you step by step how to actually set up those trusts. You get lifetime access to the course, and we also have resources and ebooks. So the book list that I just mentioned, you get that book list electronically inside of the program. One of those books on the list costs over $800. You also get the resources. So what are the resources? Well, whatever it is that you need in order to operate your trust, we provide you with the template. So for example, if you need to transfer your house into the trust, we provide you with the quick claim deeds. If you need to transfer your car, we provide you with the bill of sales. If you need to transfer your LLCs, we provide you with the business purchase agreement. If you need to have a board meeting, we provide you with the templates for your board meeting. whatever it is that you need. We have all of the resources available for you because we teach you how to operate the trust. It's not that you just get, you get this contract and you set it up and then you not know what to do with it. We show you what to do with it, right? Another thing is that we're building a community here. It's called the Wealthy Trustee Community. And it is like-minded individuals that are trustees. Some of these individuals have been trustees for years. And they have their assets fully protected in a trust. And you have access to them. So we have a private Facebook community. We also have a Telegram chat. So you could be right here on your phone chatting back and forth with other trustees in our community. The chat is lit, okay? It's a lot of action going on in there. Why? Because these individuals, not only are they like-minded, but they live in your city. They live in your state. They're here to be a resource for you as well. So the course is only $997, you guys. And then we also have master classes. The master classes are usually once or twice a month. And that's when I bring in educators to come and educate you about taxes. Our CPAs come, about real estate investing. So we have investors that come and teach you about that, right? So you're constantly being educated inside of the program, okay? It's not like a whole one and done thing. This is like, we're doing life. We're lifers here, okay? So that's the first option. The second option is done with you. That's when we do it together on Zoom. So do you see how we're on a Zoom right now, right? So we do it together on Zoom, and it is in a workshop style setting, right? Our workshop is literally next week, you guys, Monday through Friday, okay? So on Monday, we are going to meet on Zoom from 11 to 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And on Monday, we focus on setting up the business trust. What I do is I break down every single paragraph of the trust. Why? Because I want you to know the contents of the trust. If you don't know the contents of the trust, you're not going to know how to operate the trust. You're not going to know what's inside of your trust. I break down every single paragraph. That trust alone is 52 pages. I break down every single paragraph. After we're done, where I show you step by step on how to set it up, we dive into Q&A. I don't get off the call until every single question is answered, okay? And the most powerful thing about being in a workshop virtually is that you have other individuals that are also attending the workshop, right? That, like I said, are like-minded, and they're asking questions that you didn't even know you wanted to know. So now you get to learn more because you get to piggyback off of the energy off of the next person that asked a really good question that you didn't even know you wanted to know. That's how powerful it is to be in that space. On day 2, Tuesday, we focus on setting up the family trust, okay? So what we do is I break down every paragraph and we dive into Q&A. On day 3, we focus on the nonprofit. I break down every single paragraph. That trust is 62 pages, right? And then I show you guys how to become ordained ministers if that's what you want, if you're going to operate it like a ministry. And then we dive into Q&A. On Thursday, we focus on the business. So we get the EIN numbers for the trust. And then I show you guys how to have board meetings. Do you know how many people are operating businesses and corporations and never even had a meeting? We do things the right way. Proper documentation. I show you how to have a board meeting. I show you banking procedures so you can go open up a bank account for your trust. I show you promissory notes so you can document loans. And one of our educators comes in and teaches you how to build business credit and how to get funding, business funding for your trust so that you can go ahead and acquire these assets. Literally, not like no money out of your own pocket. You're going to be building your empire off of OPM, using other people's money. That's what we do. And then the last day is Friday. Friday, we focus on asset protection. So what I do is I give you all of the tools that you need. So the first thing I show you is how to transfer your house into the trust. So we go over quitclaim deeds. Then we do the car. So how to transfer your car into the trust. We go over the bill of sale so you can submit it to the DMV. Then how to transfer your LLCs and corps into the business trust. We do the business purchase agreements and the amendments with the Secretary of State. And then the very last thing is I have one of our educators who comes in and teaches you step by step about the Index Universal Life Insurance policies and how to use those policies to eliminate your debt and to build wealth by the cash value and the compound interest. It's extremely powerful. So the workshops are live, all right? And they are once a month. So the one that we have that's coming up is next week, all right? It's the 5th to the 9th, and it is from 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time to 2 p.m. The workshops are also recorded. You have lifetime access to the recording. So as soon as we're done with the workshop, we'll upload the recording so that you can go back, because repetition is going to help you retain this information. Another thing is that you get lifetime access to the workshops. So we do them once a month. So every single time, so you could attend in May, you can attend in June, July, August, 2026, 2027, whenever you want, because you have lifetime access to attend the workshops. But you still get access to the course. You still get access to the resources, the ebooks, the Facebook community, and the Telegram chat. And the very last thing is that when you're done with the workshop, you're going to book a call with me so that I can double check your documentation and your trust before you go out and get them notarized, so that we could cross our T's and dot our I's. So the workshop is only $2,500. The last option is do it one-on-one, where you're going to work with me and my team. And you're going to have private Zoom sessions. So that means that it's not done in a group setting, where we're going to set up all 3 of your trusts. You get individualized support and extended support. And you get to customize everything. And then we also focus on OPM. So with that, you still get access to the workshop and you still get access to the course. But it's a one-on-one with me and the team. So the private sessions are only $10,000. So if you guys are interested, then you can go to the website. The website is wealthytrustee.com, and you can enroll. If you want to contact us, you can call us. Here is our local number. Here is the email. And then you can also visit us on social media. What I want to do is I want to show you guys what our course looks like. I also want to show you guys what the trust looks like. And what I'm doing now is for this week, I'm offering 50% off because we have the workshop starting next week. So I want to give you that gift in order for you to be able to get access to the workshop, okay? It is starting on Monday. We're going to hit the ground running, okay? So if you guys want to enjoy 50% off, then you can use the discount code that's inside of the chat. So it's Trust50 on the website, okay? So let me go ahead and show you what the course looks like. Let's see here, hold on. So this is the course, all right? So if you guys enroll, this is what you get access to, lifetime access to the course. So the first section is trust entities, where we go over the different types of trust, the different parties involved in the trust, grantor, trustee, beneficiary, the benefits of having a trust. And then the next section is the tax exempt trust. So I show you how to set it up, the bylaws, the trust constitution. And then we go through the family trust. So you go through the bylaws, the indenture, the different schedules, how to apply for the EIN. The same thing with the unincorporated business trust. And then we go through tax strategies. So you learn how to operate tax exempt for that type of trust. You learn the difference between the 3 different types of trusts, and how to label distributable net income. Then we go into asset protection, where first you're going to take an inventory of your assets so that you know what assets that you have and which assets qualify to actually go inside of the trust and which assets qualify to, don't qualify and they have to stay out of the trust, okay? We show you how to create a bank account, a brokerage account, how to transfer your house, your car, your insurance policies, your businesses, how to have board meetings. And then we go into wealth creation, where we show you how to build credit. We show you how to invest in the stock market and how to do infinite banking with the life insurance policies. We show you how to build that legacy with the legacy crest. And then as far as your resources, you have your resources and your ebooks. So now what I want to do is I want to show you what an actual trust looks like. So this is one of our trust entities. Okay, so this is the contract. So everything that you see in red is what you're going to be customizing. So it's very simple to follow along and to customize it to your family and to your business organization, okay? All right, you guys, so we are all done here. The last thing I want to mention is that I do have a giveaway on YouTube. So right now, we are streaming live on YouTube, okay? And the giveaway ends on Thursday, May 1st. So if you want a chance to be able to win access to our workshop next week, then you can enter the giveaway. So that is also going to be inside of the chat, you guys, okay? So I want to open up the floor for Q&A. Is there anyone who has any questions on the information that I shared with you guys tonight? You can raise your hand or you could come off of mute. Let me know if you have any questions.
Yes, you talked about the protections, but I don't think you spoke on foreclosure.
Oh, okay. What is your question about foreclosure?
How we oh.
So how can it protect you against foreclosure? So one, it's very hard to foreclose on a house that is inside of a trust because that's a creditor going after a trust entity and they can't even serve the entity. So foreclosure is very sticky because you don't know what phase you are in, right? If you're already in pre-foreclosure or if you're already in foreclosure and that house is in your personal name, it won't help you. You cannot transfer that house into a trust when you're in the middle of foreclosure. That is an illegal transfer. Okay, so it's only going to help you prior to foreclosure, meaning that that house needs to already be in a trust in order for it to be very hard for a bank to foreclose on your property. Okay. Any other questions?
What happens when you transfer your property into the trust with the homestead exemption?
So it depends on the county. So all you have to do is let the county know that it is still your primary residence. They're going to provide you with paperwork and you have to fill out that paperwork.
Will they record it? Because I know they like to record a whole lot of things and put it as public record.
Yeah, so sometimes the county will ask you for the entire thing. So it's up to you if you want to give them your whole trust in order for you to qualify for homestead exemption. So for some people, it's worth it because they're saving on property taxes. For others, it's not.
Okay, because I was going to ask if you would recommend it.
I don't recommend that you give your trust entity to anyone.
Okay.
Thank you, Sabrina.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Welcome. Any other questions? Deanna?
Hey, my question is, so say I got created a trust, like all 3 trusts. What would I do with my business bank accounts that I have for my businesses? Would it be like the same with the others? Like
That's a
just donate the money?
That's a really good question. So your, when you set up the business trust and you have the business trust own your existing business, everything that's happening with your existing business is going to remain intact. Meaning that you're still going to operate your business and you're still going to have your business bank accounts. What you want to do with the business bank accounts is you want to have the business trust be the beneficiary of those business bank accounts. If you want to transfer money from those business bank accounts into the business trust account, then you can do that regularly by check, by ZELLE, by wire transfer, however you want to do that transfer.
Okay, would it be better to transfer the money to the IUL versus the trust bank account?
So that's only if the IUL is associated with that trust.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Next we have Michaela.
Question.
Is it
Yes,
Mich-
I got a question. Like, can someone actually kind of like two questions in one? Can someone be both the grantor and the successor? Because the issue with me is I don't have any beneficiaries, so I'm trying to figure out how how would set something like it up.
So it depends. So it depends on the trust. If you want to set up an irrevocable trust, the grantor cannot be anything else but the grantor. So you would have to choose someone else to be the successor. Because the successor is going to take over for you. So that successor is going to have power and control in the future after you're done.
Okay, thank you.
Welcome. All right. Any other questions?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yes.
Yeah, got a couple of questions. One question is, if you're setting the trust up in a 508c1a, why would the county taxes matter at that point?
So the 508c1a only exempts you from federal taxes.
Oh,
Not from county taxes. You would have to go down to the county to qualify.
okay.
Yeah.
So it's just only federal taxes
Correct.
from no property taxes.
So correct. So it's not automatic. You have to go down to the county. You have to apply for property tax exemption. You have to go through a application process and they'll be able to either approve you or deny you. They're going to ask you for documentation.
Okay.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Any other questions?
Yeah, I have two questions.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
One question is, what do you think about putting your house into a land trust?
Mm-hmm. I mean, so putting your house into any trust is better than it being in your personal name.
Okay. Okay. And for the workshop, do we work on all three trusts during the workshop for the 2,500?
Yes, ma'am. So Monday we work on the business trust. Tuesday we work on the family trust. Wednesday we work on the nonprofit.
Okay. And then for the Index Universal Life, that comes in later on. That's something separate?
No, we work on it on Friday. So it's also during the workshop. So we work on everything collectively as a group on the workshop. And then later on, what you're going to do is you're going to branch off with our insurance team so they can set up your Index Universal Life. You'll branch off with our credit team so that they can set up the business credit for you. You'll branch off with me so I can double check your trust.
Okay, I see. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And also too, it's 50% off.
Unbelievable.
50% off now, 50% off the 25.
That's the stone cold truth.
Okay.
Have I lied to you so far? We've been going through this for two hours now.
Okay.
It's a gift. And the reason why I do it is because I have a workshop next week. So I want you to attend. So I'm giving you a gift so that you can actually attend.
All right.
All right.
So
Yeah, I got.
regarding the universal life insurance, are we able to like actually get into one during the course based on our what we can contribute, or is that a separate process? Like, is it a I accept you or I don't based on health and all that?
Yeah, so it is an application process. So we have an entire team that handles the insurance for you, okay? So when you get into the program, then you're going to branch off with the insurance team to say, yeah, I'm ready to set up my IULs. So they're going to show you an illustration to show you, hey, based off of your age and based off of how much money you want to funnel into your program and into your policy, this is what that policy looks like. If you're ready to move forward, we'll apply so that they can do a medical exam and approve you. So and they can either approve you or deny you. So it is based off of the medical exam.
And so do they do the actual medical exam, or do you give them doctor's records or whatever?
They actually send a nurse out to your house to do a physical and to take blood work. And then they also research your medical records. The insurance company, not us. And so obviously that's with your permission.
Okay, Miss Christina.
What if you had a on the job injury, but you recovered, but still gonna show on your history?
So it just depends on what will show up. So it depends on like how long, in the past. So history is important too. But they really don't care about like injuries. It's more like medical stuff like cancer and stuff like that. And so the only thing that you can do is just apply and see, if you're approved or not. So I tell everyone, apply. Even if you have, like, they accept people who have a history of cancer. They accept people who have diabetes and high blood pressure, all that stuff. So it's not saying that because you have one blemish on your medical record that you're not going to get approved. You don't have to have perfect medical history at all.
Yeah, I don't have none of those problems. I just had
Diabetes.
an accident on work at work, and now I'm waiting. I'm about to get my. Been about almost 3 years now. Now I'm about to get my settlement. Just waiting on this judge to sign off on the paperwork, so I can put this money in this trust when I take your workshop.
Absolutely, that's powerful.
Yeah, so that's really what I'm waiting on, to get that cash so I can send it over to you and get that started.
Absolutely.
Because I started a revocable trust, but I didn't name it correctly, and I need an irrevocable one anyway. So
Yes, sir.
I fully understand that.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Well, I look forward to, helping you through this process. And, it's just time to get the ball rolling. So whenever you're ready, you just let us know. But what you're explaining, the process that you're going to take is a beautiful process.
Okay. And I read about a foreign private trust, where you have a foreign trustee with a 98 number.
Mm-hmm.
You ever heard anything about that process?
Yeah, I'm very familiar with it.
And in your 8832, all you stuff over to that trust, the form 8832. You familiar with that one?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
All
But
right.
yeah, I'm looking forward to taking the class.
Thank you, Paul. Rich, did you have something to say?
Yes, I'd like to ask you a question, couple of questions, please.
Yeah.
Yeah, on the grantor, I don't have anybody can act as a grantor.
Okay,
Is there a way out of that?
there's no way out of it. You need a grantor for a trust, but the beautiful thing about our community is that we have community members that volunteer to be your grantor if you don't have one. So we call it the circle of trust, where if you don't have a grantor, or if you don't have, you know, a board member or anything like that, like whatever it is that you need in your trust, our community members will help you. So, you know, so that is also a resource that's available to you if you, you know, if you get stuck. Okay.
And do I need to pay for the grantor? And also, if I have to have a board member, if I
No,
need to.
no. So that's just you building relationship with your community members. That's why we have a community. So our community is over 1,000 trustees.
Oh, I see. And do they have to be in the? Because I'm in Las Vegas. Do I need to have a grantor that is in Las Vegas?
No, your grantor can be anywhere.
Anywhere.
Yeah.
What about the board member?
Yeah, they could be anywhere.
They could be.
Yeah,
And
anywhere.
is it necessary to have a board member?
No, it's not. It's just a protection mechanism within the trust organization.
What kind of protection, if I may ask?
It protects you from self-dealing. So self-dealing is where, hey, I've created this and I'm doing this only for me. So a trust is not necessarily for you, it's for the beneficiaries. So you set up a board so that there's other members there holding you accountable.
I see. And the 50%, if I sign up for what's the first one, which is
The course, do it yourself
uh,
course.
the-
Yeah, it's totally independent.
and then if I decided to upgrade it to the done it with you,
You could upgrade at any time, and all you have to do is pay the difference, and then you'll have access to all of the workshops and the recordings lifetime.
oh, okay.
Yeah, so a lot of people they do that. They'll get into the course and then they'll decide, hey, I don't want to do it by myself. I want to attend the workshop, and they'll upgrade.
Okay, and the upgrade will be based also on the 50% of the done it with you.
So if you have that, you know, if it's available, so I'm not saying that, you know, I'm not saying that it is, but if it is available to where you got a discount, then my team will honor it for you.
I see. And also the 508c1A, is that because years ago I tried to set up a religious uh, entity which utilizes a 508c1A, and I was told that it is not available like in California and Las Vegas, and so I have to set it up in Montana, and I had problem with that, and so I have not renewed that with the Secretary of State in Montana. So is that because they've been telling me that it was not grandfathered, and only certain state has that 508c1A, what do you call this distinction?
So
Hello?
so you have to decide if you want to register it or not. Okay, so that is optional. A 508c1A can operate privately, and it is still a tax exempt entity, or you can operate it publicly. So what you did was you decided to operate it publicly.
Ah, I see.
So that's the difference.
So privately, I still can, what do you call this, take advantage of what do you call this, tax exempt?
Yes.
Oh, I see. Um, Interesting. Um, uh, what do you call this? Grantor, you can help me with that board.
How the hell?
And then What about the co-trustee? I can have one of my children.
It's optional, so you can decide to have a co-trustee or not, and if you do want a co-trustee, it can be one of your children.
So if I have a co-trustee, do I still need to have a board of trust?
They are automatically a part of the board.
Oh, so they is saying they gonna do it.
It's automatic.
Oh, the co-trustee, okay, the part of the, but I still can get a board, right? I
Yep.
can still. I see.
Oh, somebody's off of mute. I'm sorry. Okay. All right. Any other questions, Rich? I'm gonna go to the last two hands and then we're gonna wrap it up.
I think that's all for now. Thank
Okay.
you for answering my
You're,
question. Very interesting. You have a wealth of knowledge on this one. Thank you so much.
you're so welcome. Thank you for being here tonight. I appreciate you attending and
Thank
staying
you.
the whole entire time. All right. Next we have, I think it's Rain.
Yes, thank
Hi.
you.
Hi.
Hi, how are you?
Good, wonderful. How are you?
Great, thank you. I had a question regarding the people who sign up for your contest on YouTube. How will the winner be notified?
I'm gonna do a live drawing and then it's going to be posted on our community board on YouTube, and then you have to contact our my team and then they'll give you access. They'll enroll you.
Okay. And you told him that the grantor didn't need to be in the same state as him when he sets his trust up, but how would they sign with the trustee and the notary to get it notarized?
You would ship it to them and they would get it notarized and they'll ship it back to you.
Okay. And I guess that answers my second question too. So yes, that's it. That's all I have. Thank you for doing this. I really appreciate it.
Welcome, Rain. I appreciate you being here as well. Hope to see you in the workshop, my dear. All right. Next we have Diana.
Hi, yes, Christina.
Hi.
How
Hi.
are you?
Wonderful.
My question is about the beneficiaries. If one of my beneficiaries passed, would the spouse acquire the benefit?
No. So it depends on you, but one of the restrictions that we put in there is that the TCUs belong solely to the beneficiary and not to their marriage partner. So the TCUs would go to your beneficiary, and then your beneficiary would need to notify you on who they want their TCUs to go to. If they didn't notify you, then it'll automatically go to their heirs. And if they don't have any heirs, it'll automatically go back to the trust, and then the trust or you will redistribute the TCUs to whoever's left as your existing beneficiaries. So there's a whole process and we teach you that process.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys, I'm going to end our live webinar. It was a pleasure being with you guys here tonight. And I just want you to take action on the information that I shared with you guys, because you guys are the generational curse breakers in your family. I know this for sure because I know that the only people that cross my path are people that are just like me, which are the individuals that are breaking the curses of poverty, breaking, the curses of the financial burdens in their family, and actually going to leave this legacy so that they can change the trajectory of their family, right? So that now your children are going to be raised as trustees, right? Beneficiaries, trustees, versus how they're raised now, right? With no financial literacy, no education, and they can't even inherit your job, right? So now you're going to build that legacy, and they're going to have a position within your estate. So you guys, I appreciate you being here tonight, and I look forward to seeing you guys in the workshop next week. Bye-bye, take care, and God bless.